Welcome back. In today's class, we will see how to use dictionaries and sets in our Python programs. Dictionaries and sets are both unordered data structures. Previously, we looked at lists and tuples, both of which were ordered data structures. So suppose we don't care the order in which items are stored within our data structure, we can use either a dictionary or a set to store such data. First, let's see how to create a dictionary, what kind of objects can be stored within a dictionary, and then we will look at sets and what's the difference between a dictionary and a set. Now to create an empty dictionary, the syntax is as follows. Empty underscore dict is the name of the variable, and we are assigning it a pair of braces. Since there is no item inside the pair of braces, it creates an empty dictionary object. Now a dictionary in Python, a dictionary is implemented as a class in Python. So when we call the function type and pass empty underscore dict, it returns the type to be class. The name of the class is dict. So first let's look at the print. Okay, now there is a lot of similarity between lists and dictionaries. In the previous class, we looked at lists. Lists were useful to store items of different types, and we could simply use an integer index to access a specific item or a value. Now, first let's look at how to create a phone book in a Python program using lists. Now, the phone book should have names, and each name should have a phone number associated with it. To create a phone book using lists in Python, we need to store names in one list and the corresponding phone numbers in the second list. Since lists are ordered, we should also pay attention to the order in which the names are added to the first list, and we should add the numbers to the second list in the same order. We can then use the zip to iterate through multiple lists. We saw this in the previous class. So for k comma v in zip phone underscore book underscore names comma phone underscore book underscore numbers will simply iterate through both these lists simultaneously, and it will print the items or elements stored within these individual lists. Okay, so when I print all the items in these two lists, we should see John's number is 123, Jane's number is 234, and Jared's number is 345. Okay, so we created a phone book by using two lists. The first list was a list of names, the second list was a list of numbers. Now there is a more simpler way of doing this in Python, that's by using a dictionary. Dictionary is more suitable when we have a natural key order pair in our data. We can create these key order pairs and store them as items within our dictionary. So to create this phone book as a dictionary, the syntax is as follows. Phone underscore book is the name of the variable. On the right hand side, we create a pair of braces. Within the pair of braces, we will create key value pairs. So the syntax to create key value pairs is as follows. First, we will write a key. Key here is a string. And then we will follow it with the colon. And after that, a value. Value here is an integer. We can create multiple key value pairs and add it to the dictionary. We will simply use comma to separate key value pairs. So key here is a string. So John, Jane, and Jared are the keys. Value is an integer. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5 are the values associated with the keys. Now notice both keys and values are stored in the same data structure, so we don't need to really worry about the ordering of keys and values like with lists. And we can simply print phone underscore book. This should print all the items or the elements of this list dictionary. Now dictionary is versatile, and first let's see what kind of keys can be created. It's not necessary that keys are always strings. Key can also be an integer. So I can create one and store a as the value, the character a. I can create the second key as 2, store another character as the value, and I can also use tuples to be keys. So a key can be any immutable type in Python. And the immutable types that we've seen so far are integers, strings, and tuples. So I can create a tuple of values. So it can be anything. And as we saw in the last class, tuples are immutable. That is, once we add elements to our tuple and create it, we cannot add more elements. And now the value can be a list. So it's not necessary the value should be a string or an integer. It can also be a list, it can be a set, it can be a tuple, it can be even a user-defined object. So this is a valid syntax in Python. There is a syntax error here because I forgot to write this within a pair of braces. Okay, so now when I print A, this should print all the key value pairs stored within this dictionary object. So a dictionary is really powerful, as I mentioned before. The keys can be any immutable types, value can be any type in Python. It can be an integer, it can be a float, string, lists, sets, tuples, or even user-defined objects. Now let's look at what happens when we pass dictionary to some inbuilt methods. First, let's see what happens when we pass a dictionary object to len. Previously, we saw when we pass a list to len, it simply returns the number of items in the list. Now the behavior should be similar with dictionaries. It should simply return the number of key value pairs in the dictionary. Since our phone_book had 3 key value pairs, the number of items in our phone book is 3. Okay, now suppose I want to delete a particular key value pair, we can use the del keyword. So del phone_book in square brackets John will delete the key John and its associated value. So now when I print the phone book again, we should see only 2 key value pairs, chain and Jared. Now suppose I want to delete all the key value pairs, I can use the clear method. So clear is again an inbuilt method in this class TICT. So since phone_book is an object or an instance of the class TICT, I can call it its methods using the dot operator. So now dot clear will simply delete everything. So we should see an empty dictionary at the end. Now let's look at more examples. Here I want to show you first how to access a certain value using a key. To access a value using a key, we will use the square brackets operator. With lists, we were writing an integer index within the square brackets operator to access the corresponding item or value stored within the list. Now with dictionary, we can instead use a key within the square brackets. So here I'm creating a new dictionary, prices. The keys are espresso, americano, latte, and pastry. And its corresponding values are 5, 8, 10, and various prices. Now suppose I want to know what's the cost of latte. I can simply access the value associated with latte using the square brackets operator. Since it's an integer, I'm converting it to a string and then concatenating it with dollar using the plus operator. So now let's look at what will be the cost of latte. So this should be $10. Okay, so similarly, we can also query what's the list of pastry, and this should give us various prices. Now, it's not necessary that, so first, now let's check what happens when we pass a non-existent key to the square bracket operator. So here I'm printing the price of Irish coffee, which does not exist in our prices dictionary. So the syntax here should already give away what happens. There should be an exception raised. So since I'm writing this in a try except block, this particular piece of code will cause an exception. The reason for exception is because of a non-existent key. We are trying to access this particular dictionary using a key that does not exist. So this should cause an exception. And we are handling this exception by using a try except block. So now Irish coffee does not exist should be shown on the terminal. So what this shows us is that when we are using square brackets operator to access a particular key value pair, we should make sure that either the key value pair is already added to our dictionary object, or we should write this particular statement within a try except block and handle the exception when the key does not exist. Now a more safer way of doing this is by using the inbuilt method get. We can simply pass a key to this method get, and get will simply return the value associated with this key. And notice here we can also pass an invalid or non-existent key, and Python will simply return none when the key does not exist. So when I print prices.get Irish coffee, the return value is none since Irish coffee does not exist. Okay. Next, let's see what happens when we write this line. So here we already saw that Irish space coffee does not exist in our dictionary. So when we try to access it with square brackets operator, it caused an exception. However, this line should execute when we try to assign a value to this key which does not exist. Now what Python does is when it executes this line, it first checks whether Irish space coffee is a valid key. If it's a valid key, it simply modifies the value. If it's not a valid key, it'll create a new key value pair. So the key now is Irish space coffee and the value is 10. So the next line simply shows you what happens when an existing key is modified. Americano is already part of our prices dictionary. So when I write this statement, the current value, which is 8.0, corresponding to this key Americano, should be modified and the new value will be 8.5. So now when we print the prices dictionary after updating it, notice there is an additional key value pair, Irish coffee and its corresponding value, and Americano's price is now changed from 8.0 to 8.5. Okay. We can also use the update method instead of using the square brackets operator and the equal to statement to assign a new value. We can use the update method. We can pass a key and then assign it a new value. Now notice the key here is not with a single quote, or it's not using quotes. So even though Americano was a string and we are simply passing Americano as an argument and assigning it a value equal to 12.5 when we call the update method. So this should change Americano's price from 8.5 to 12.5. So we can either use the square brackets operator and access a particular key value pair and modify its value by assigning it a new value, or we can use the update method.